Today I'm going to talk about the literacy crisis and how it's not a real thing. It's not. Um, if you're like me, you have seen a lot of stuff on your For You page about the literacy crisis. School just started, so people are obviously bringing it up. And that high school teacher who was in tears about how his students can't read. Um, so it's obviously sparked a lot of conversation. And I want to talk about how the literacy crisis is not real. It's not. Okay? Um, and let's just go over the numbers, okay? And I will read it out as I Googled it, and you can go back and Google it and fact check it. And if I'm wrong, if I missed something, I am dyslexic, so I could have. But let's go over it. So, if you Google what percentage was of the US population was functionally illiterate in the 80s, that's 20%, around 26 million. Okay? If you Google what percent was functionally illiterate in the 90s, that's about 21 to 23%. If you Google what percent is functionally illiterate today, that's 21%, around 43 million. And so I also Googled what was the US population increase from the 80s to the 90s. That's about 51%. 115 million. Okay. And then I've also seen people talk about how, yes, there are learning disabilities, but it can't be everyone, right? It can't. So I Googled that. What percentage of the US population is dyslexic? Now, I do know there are other learning disabilities, but dyslexic is the big one. Makes up about I think 80% is what I saw. So it's the big one, and that can directly contribute to people's reading, writing, and spelling ability, which, would contribute to being functionally illiterate. Because it doesn't make you dumb. It just means you have a learning disability, and it makes it harder, okay? But that number is from 15 to 20%. So if it's 15%, that's about 52 million. And then that's also about 68 million on the high end of 20%. And I bring it up because, that I saw someone who was like, and not everyone could be dyslexic. And it's like, that's not true. 52 million is a very high margin. You've definitely met people who are illiterate. You've definitely met people who are dyslexic. And they may be the same person, okay? Because you're not going to meet someone and be like, that person's definitely dyslexic. You're not. Some people are very high functioning. Just like with autism, you may meet people who you don't know who are autistic or have ADHD or any other thing. But you don't know that. So you don't know. But I bring up the numbers because they really haven't changed at all. They haven't changed from the 80s to now. Okay? They're consistent. The numbers are consistent. And they're also consistent with the dyslexia rates. Okay? And I also Googled, I didn't write it down on my paper, but I did Google what percent of US born is functionally illiterate, because there are people who immigrate here, and they are also put into those statistics. So it's about 66% of the 21% who are functionally illiterate who were born in America, who were raised here, went to school here, and all that good nonsense. And so that puts the number around 14% of the US population, US born population, right? Roughly. It's like, I did the math, it's like 13 something, so we'll say 14 on the high end. That also still would coincide with dyslexia rates. So I just find it funny that they frame it in a way of like, oh, it's despicable. It's despicable that these people can't read. And they also try to frame it in this way of, oh, I'm not talking about people with disabilities or a learning disability. I'm not talking about them. Obviously, I'm not talking about them. And it's like, what do you mean, obviously, you're not talking about them? Because, yes, you are. Because you can't sit here and say it's not everyone who is dyslexic. Yes, the numbers very well go with the fact that it would be people who are dyslexic. And I didn't look up people who are autistic. I didn't look up any other thing. But the numbers, because there are other learning disabilities, the numbers do coincide with dyslexia, which is the most common learning disability, which directly affects your ability to read, write, and spell, which would contribute to the literacy crisis. Would it not? I'm no mathematician, but I can see it. Okay? I'm dyslexic. Maybe I am reading it wrong. But you're not gonna and what really bugs me is I just wish these people would say that they don't want to be around people that they don't feel like are on the same intellectual plane as them. Because that's the truth. They wish that it was still back in the day when you could just hide like your weird cousin up in the fucking attic. They do. They absolutely do. They wish they didn't have to interact with these people. They wish they didn't have to see them on social media. They wish they didn't have to ever hear about them. Because now we do have social media and we have laws against discriminating in people who have these disabilities. And they fucking hate it. And they want to frame it in a way of like, no, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the normal people. But that's such a small margin of people comparatively to people who are dyslexic. Like, genuinely, when you look at the numbers, it's, and again, I didn't look up, because I didn't look up whether or not the population contributed with, like, people who have Down syndrome or autistic, who, I don't know, there's a plethora of disabilities. Got shaken baby syndrome, or I don't know. I didn't look up everything that contributes into these. I just looked up the basic population and what dyslexic is. Because those numbers do coincide. And you can't act like they don't. Now, obviously, I do think that we could do better as a society, as someone who is dyslexic. And what I'm about to say next is gonna be controversial. And I know it is. It is like there's three things that we could do better as a society. Now, one of them, I know people are going to get butthurt because I've seen people talk about how the real problem behind the literacy crisis, I also have a speech impediment, is the parents. It's their fault. It's their fault. Now, it is to some extent, and I'll get into that. But there's three things that cause. Okay, so there's the social aspect. There's a funding aspect. And people aren't gonna like that. But it is the teacher's fault as well. I know. Those are the three big things. Now, I am dyslexic. I went to special ed between 1st grade and 6th grade. Okay? I have a speech impediment, so I did speech therapy. I also have ADHD. So, let me tell you why it's the teacher's fault. Okay? The teachers write these children off so quickly, it is insane. I'm going to talk about two stories. So when I was in 2nd grade, I had this teacher, and I really wanted this teacher. She was the teacher across from me in kindergarten, but when I went to second grade, she switched up to a second grade teacher. And I was so excited that I got her. She seemed like the nicest teacher. She was so kind. She was always doing fun experiments with her kids. She seemed like the best teacher. And I quickly learned she was a good teacher for kids who it clicked easy. Okay? Kids who did not need a little extra help. Because if you didn't know, if you are dyslexic, you're in special ed, you also still have a normal class. You still go to normal classes. So you go to your primary teacher, and then when reading comes out, or math, for some people, I only needed it for reading. But for math, for some people, you would get pulled out, and they would go do your lessons, and then you'd get put back into your math, your regular teacher, for them to do whatever little lesson. And so this teacher, she did not like me. She did not like me. So I have ADHD. It was even worse as a kid. She did not like it. She did not like that I was a little bit more rambunctious. And let's call it what it was. I was annoying. I was annoying. I was rude. I had a dysfunctional home life. It is what it is. I was rude. I didn't listen. I got up a lot. Like, I didn't listen. And that's what it was. Okay, I was a hyperactive kid. I didn't like being in the classroom. It was not fun for me. There was nothing I liked about it. I also had a harder time. This teacher did not take any time to make sure she was engaging with me. And I'm not saying that she should, because, again, with the funding issue, I'm going to hop from place to place, when I'm talking about the funding, the social, and the teaching aspect. So a funding issue. It's impossible for a teacher who's teaching 30 children to genuinely be able to engage. Okay? It really is. And even when you go to these special ed classes, it's not one or two kids. Like I said, there is a high number of people who have dyslexia. So there's multiple children in these classrooms. And again, they're special needs, so they're dyslexic. They also have like ADHD, ADD, whatever other issue. Like, they have some sort of issue coinciding with their dyslexia, or whatever learning disability. So it's impossible for these teachers. So they need more funding. So there should never be more than, like, there should always be like 3 teachers in a classroom. Okay, someone to primarily be teaching, someone to be like, and then 2 others to be walking around and helping these children out. Because even with the teacher's aide, because this class did have a teacher's aide, and I'll get to that. So she had a teacher's aide. And she didn't like me. So the teacher's aide primarily dealt with me. Because she didn't like me. She didn't like that it didn't click for me. She didn't like that she had to take extra time to explain. She didn't like me. And I'm going to tell you when she completely wrote me off. Now, she'd written me off kind of before, again, because she didn't like me. But it was on St. Patty's Day, and I remember specifically, because, I did not wear green. So this kid kept pinching me, and I kept pinching him, because he didn't have green on either, but he thought he was going to be funny and pinch me. And I obviously was doing it a little rougher than he was. And so he had some marks, and he told the teacher, and she didn't like me already. So she came yelling at me. I was like, hey, and she did not even listen a little bit when I was like, hey, he's pinching me. She was like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. She didn't say that to me, but she was like, he's got marks on him. I don't care. You leave him alone. Don't you even go near him. So she's tripping out on me. And so the kid continues to try to pinch me. And so I go to pinch him, because, he's like taunting me. And she sees, and she's like, I told you to stay away from him. You're getting our focus. And as a kid, that was like a big deal. And it was a big deal to me because I had a dysfunctional home life. And so I would have got a dysfunctional home life repercussion. Okay. So, which also contributes to the social aspect is like these teachers do not understand that some of these kids have like tumultuous home lives. They don't have the best home lives. And they don't take the time to like understand it. And it's very interesting. Like they should take some child development class, right? Because they're 8. Like I was 8. And this lady is like does not understand that I'm hyperactive. I'm dyslexic. I'm having a hard time. And I'm having a hard time at home. And again, well, I didn't say this before, so I didn't need to say again. But I'm the youngest of 12. So, at home, there's always a crowd. There's always an audience to everything. So when you're being belittled, you know, having that dysfunctional home life atmosphere. I don't want to get too much into details because if I ever make money off of this shit, I have the family that would sue for sure. So I'm just gonna keep it as dysfunctional. So so they don't understand. They don't try to understand. They're like, no, it's the kid's problem. It's never their home life. It's never anything that I've done. It's always the kid's problem. And so she gives me this refocus. It obviously meant a big deal to me. And I didn't fill it out because I was just like, well, I'm not gonna bring it home because in my head that made more sense. I'm like, I'm just not gonna fucking fill it out. And she didn't make me because she didn't fucking like me, so she was just like, I give up on this kid. This kid's gonna be fucking nothing. And she did. Like after that, she almost didn't interact with me. Like her interactions were very minimum. Again, the teachers, they primarily dealt with me anyway, but more so after that too. Because she was done. She was done. She did not care that I was a complete annoyance to her. I had behavioral issues. I had academic issues. I had like speech issues, which contributed to my academic issues. And it was all one big annoyance to her. She did not like a single bit of it. And I mentioned I have a speech impediment. So I went to speech therapy. Also did not get along with my speech therapist. Again, dysfunctional home life. I was rambunctious. Bit of an asshole. So we didn't get along. And I remember the last time I ever went to her class, I think I was in 3rd grade. I still needed the class. I was in 3rd grade. I still needed the class, but we had an altercation. Not a big one. But I guess not an altercation. We had a dispute. And so I can't even remember what we were talking about. But I made the kids laugh because I was a little asshole. I was much more into distracting people than I was, or getting out of my seat than I was actually learning. And she's pissed off. She's yelling at me. She's like, you need to focus. This is ridiculous. These kids need to learn. You're disrupting their learning. You're disrupting your learning. You're being rude to me. Which is all true. But again, I am dyslexic. I have ADHD and a dysfunctional home life. Now, they didn't necessarily know about the dysfunctional home life because my parents were good at portraying not having a good dysfunctional home life. They may have not been ducks, but they knew how to quack and walk like one. So they were good at it. And so we're arguing. We're going, and I'm like, well, fuck you. I didn't say that. I was like, you know what? Well, I'm not coming back to your class. Like, because she always had a problem with me because, again, I was rambunctious. I was annoying. I was a bit rude. I'll admit it. I was. I was unnecessarily rude. I I wasn't very good at that age about not repeating what I thought, so I spoke out loud a little bit. Again, rude. Burping. So, she didn't like me. We were arguing, I was like, I'm never coming back to this class. You're rude, you don't like me. It's clear. I don't like you. And so she's like, you have to come to this class. I was like, well, I'm just not going to. She's like, you know what? Then I won't even make you. I'm just done. And she was. I never went back to that class. I never went back. I don't know if she filled out a thing saying I didn't need to. I don't know what happened. But I never went back to that class. And again, it's just these teachers who, and all of this is on my chart. All of, like, I had ADHD, that was on my chart. I was dyslexic, other than the home life. But these are things that these teachers should have some knowledge, some experience with, because for her, you are going in, for the speech therapist, she's going into a field where you're probably going to deal with someone who has dyslexia, ADHD, ADD, or something else, some other issue. And she was not prepared for it. It was a complete annoyance, the fact that I wasn't just willing to sit down and comply and not comply, but, sit down and listen, because I'm an 8-year-old kid. I've been doing this shit for 2-3 years, and you're just pissed off that I haven't grasped every concept of it. And that's what I mean by why it's the teacher's fault. Because a lot of teachers do this. They'll have some interaction with a kid, and they'll completely write these children off. Whether it's a behavioral issue or an academic issue, they will write them off and they will just move on. They'll say these kids will be nothing. They're never gonna learn, and I'm not gonna teach them. I don't have the time. And in fairness, they don't have the time. But you always hear about the no kid left behind policy. And it's because the teachers write them off. It's not that the kid didn't learn, it's that the teachers don't try. They're completely annoyed by the fact that they have to repeat themselves, even though they're in a field with children who may or may not have something wrong with them in one way or the other. And they have no idea how to combat it. And then they're just like, this is ridiculous. The kid didn't get whatever concept I was trying to teach them immediately. Unacceptable. They'll just be worthless. I will pay no attention to them. I will pay no mind. And that's really how they act. And it's crazy. And they'll do this at elementary levels and continue to send them up, because holding them back isn't going to do anything. I know that's the answer right now is hold them back, hold them back, hold them back. But that's not going to do anything, because these teachers are not teaching the children. They're not doing a sufficient job where they can get the knowledge that they need to succeed if they ever send them up. So it's crazy to think that's going to be our saving grace, is just hold them back. It's not going to do anything other than allow these children to be older in younger grades. That's it. That's all that's going to happen. Now maybe what you could do, because there's a bit of a social aspect of it as far as your home life. And I grew up in a trashy area. We in a poor area. So, you being a hooligan was appraised in many aspects and many people. So a lot of kids, I remember there was a thing about how our area was deemed a terrible area to raise your children. We were the number 4 area. And people are like, oh, fuck yeah, we did it. We did it. That's awesome. People that was not embarrassing to them at all. That did not make anyone reflect on anything. And I was like, I don't know, 17 when that happened. And it didn't make anyone reflect, because that kind of trashy behavior is tolerated. It's okay, it's accepted, it's encouraged. And so there's definitely a social aspect, as like far as like, well, these teachers don't know anything, schools are a prison, and all this whatever dumb nonsense people like to repeat. And kids buy it because it's not fun to be in school. It's not fun to have some fucking lady who's 27 years older than you thinking that they're better than you because you didn't grasp a concept. So it sounds better to grasp the concept of, oh, it's just a prison. They don't even care about you. They're just trying to do this, that, and whatever. So it's so obviously kids are going to grasp onto that. Again, especially if they are having a harder time. Because they are not given the opportunity to actually say, hey, I'm having a hard time. I need help, because the teachers write them off. So they're obviously going to latch on to people who don't care whether or not they are smart. They're just someone who can act in this foolish behavior with them, and that's all they care about. So there's definitely like a social aspect of, like, for sure. And I've seen people who have talked about how it's the parents' fault. And an interesting like thought I had, if you did want to put some blame on the parent, you could start finding them. That would at least make sure parents are, getting their kids' homework done. Now, I'm not saying if the kid, misses one class or one assignment. But if they're going a few months where this kid is consistently having a problem, maybe we could start finding the parents. That's gonna definitely make some of these parents, especially in low income areas, who don't have the money to be spending on these children, to be fined over them not doing well academically. That's gonna make some people step up. Because again, I don't think that everyone is a lost cause. I don't think that, even though I don't believe the literacy crisis is a real thing as far as like it being a crisis, I do think there is a lot of things that we can do to help to improve our literacy scores. And that could be one of them, holding parents accountable by not necessarily throwing them in jail or anything like that, but finding them is a decent way to hold them responsible, because calling them, giving them refocuses isn't going to do anything. Not when there's not genuine repercussions for their actions. And then again, as far as teachers go, if your students are not scoring proficiently on the test, we should start, I don't know, fucking taking away your pay. You don't get paid a lot anyway. And I saw someone who was like, oh, who the fuck was it? It was some celebrity. The Brad Pitt. No, whoever did the fucking I've never seen the movie. Good Will Hunting. Whoever did that guy. Matt Damon. He was talking about how, like, giving teachers tenure isn't a bad thing because, they dedicate their lives to it and all this, yada, yada, yada. Teachers are sold on this dream that kids are going to be able to get these concepts and these kids are going to learn, and it's just a great, like, thing for them to do. They're not understanding how incredibly hard it can be to work with children who have issues. And a lot of children have issues. A lot of them do. Even the ones who can do well academically have issues. And teachers, if an issue comes up, they don't know how to, like, engage with these children. They're not being taught anything like that. And I know, like, someone might argue they shouldn't be, but they should. You spend a great deal of time with these children. Okay? You should know how to properly interact with developing children who are going through some issues. Okay? You should. Um, what was me? But anyway, so he was on about how tenure, um, they do it because it's a genuine passion, and it might be. But how many people are gonna stop, you know, teaching because they hate these little bastards, even though they've just spent thousands of dollars on student loans? They don't get paid enough. This is like what else are they going to do? I mean, they could go back to college for sure, but that's going to take more time, more money, where they aren't being like, they're in their early 20s, late 20s. They need money, you know. Uh but my point, more or less, I'm going down a rabbit hole. It doesn't really make sense, and I'm losing my train of thought because I can't remember how I was going to connect it. But my point, more or less, is these teachers really don't have the drive to actually educate these children. They're sold on this fantasy of what teaching will be, and it's not accurate. And they hate it, and it's annoying to them, and they're not good teachers. And they need to have some accountability. Because I've seen teachers who are talking about the literacy crisis. They're like, "Oh, I have like 7th graders and they can't do these basic things." And while yeah, that's bad, it's always on the children. It's never on the adults. It's never on the teachers. Like, you are in a company, right? Like, teachers are in a company. The elementary school teachers, they don't work in the same department as the middle school and high school ones. But they are in the same company, right? It's a factory. They are producing a product, which is learning. And they're not like the the early stages of the assembly line is not producing the product properly. Someone notices later in the assembly line. Do they correct it? No. They're like, that's bad. Send it on through. No one is trying to actually fix anything. None of these teachers are taking any accountability because they do have some culpability in the literacy crisis. They do. Like, I saw someone talking about how, like, people shouldn't homeschool their kids because they're not smart enough to actually educate their children. Some people, for sure, but it doesn't appear that teachers are either. Right? If the literacy, if the literacy crisis is so bad as people make it out to be, then these teachers are obviously not doing a proper job. Because at the end of the day, like, when you are saying that parents shouldn't homeschool, you are acknowledging that teachers are the primary people to actually educate children. Okay? And then when you also say that there is a literacy crisis and how it's a terrible thing, you also put this huge blame on the parents, even though they are not educating these children. They have put a big part of their child's education in someone else's hands, and then they are now failing their children and looking at them and saying, you are the problem. And again, to some extent, there are dysfunctional homes. There are definitely parents who contribute, or like, these teachers don't know anything, you don't need to listen, you don't need to do this, blah, 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 blah. But a huge part is absolutely on the teachers. It absolutely is. Yeah, so to not acknowledge that is just bizarre to me. Like, for all these teachers who are out here yapping, oh my god, these kids don't know how to do nothing. Teach them, because that's your job. Okay? You do your job. Now, I'm not gonna say that there aren't parents who are definitely lacking on their job. Of course there are. I've seen a thing where there's, what school was it? I don't know. You could look it up. I didn't Google it. So hopefully I'm not saying a lie. But I've seen a thing where some school district is going to now enforce potty training for kindergarten teachers. That's bizarre. That's bizarre. Your teacher should not have to teach your child how to potty train. Okay, there are basic skills that parents should have to teach, but when it comes to general academics, it's on the teachers, and when the kids are failing, it's the teacher's fault. So, in a long-winded way, I'm saying that when people are talking about the literacy crisis, they're over-exaggerating. Yes, there are problems, but at the end of the day, people who are genuinely smart are going to get the concept. Most normal people, the average people, they're also going to get the concepts. The ones who are lacking, who could be helped, are not going to get it. And those numbers are going to stay the same because it's consistent. The numbers, Google what I Googled. The numbers are consistent. And those kids, though they could do better, they are never going to do better because teachers have decided it's not their problem to teach them. It's a hassle. Parents have decided that they don't need to take part in their kids' education at any extent, and they should. Though it is primarily on the teachers, parents do have to acknowledge there is a job they have to play. And it is the government's fault for not funding these teachers and overworking them where they cannot actually sufficiently teach these children the concepts that they need, the building blocks that they need for higher education. Not necessarily, not higher education as in the sense of college, but because I'm framing this all more in an elementary school setting, because that's where you get these building blocks. So when I say higher, I mean middle school and high school. Or college, for sure. But there needs to be more funding to these schools. There should never be a 30 kids to one teacher ratio. That is absolutely ridiculous. There needs to be at least 3 teachers minimum in one classroom. Minimum. And in high school and middle school, 2 teachers minimum. Okay? That would genuinely solve it. And teachers need to take more accountability for their part to play and not actually engaging with these children. And I know if some teacher sees this, they're gonna be like, well, I have this kid and they just never listen. Yeah, because they're fucking 8, okay? It is your job to figure out some way to fix it. It is your job to communicate with other teachers, the parents, to someone to figure out how to try to communicate with these kids. Not yell at them, what is your fucking problem? Now, I know that you guys wouldn't say fuck. But what is your problem? Why are you not listening? Don't come at it in a combative way because these kids are going to shut down. Because that's just what happens. Okay? So teachers need to take some culpability in their lack of educating these children. Parents need to take responsibility that they are working together in tandem with these teachers to educate their children. The government needs to fund these schools more so the teachers can get the proper help that they need. So not one teacher is being stressed the fuck out by 30 kids who may or may not have behavioral issues. So, there's the literacy crisis. But you know what? Tell me what you guys think. Am I completely wrong? Am I wrong? Have I seen this in a completely wrong light? Did I make any points that made you guys think? Did I not sway you in any way? Who's more at fault? Do you think parents are more at fault, teachers are more at fault, or the government's more at fault? Let me know.